I had
Yes.
posted yesterday about how the future of marriage therapy is bioenergetic, and that was in
Yes.
reaction to somebody else's post, T3
Yeah.
Max, and you
Yeah.
mentioned relationships, and I thought about you put this quote here: the minimum immortal unit is apparently a sexual intellectual couple. That's a quote from Ray Peat. So
Yep.
explain that, and then also I want to connect this at the individual level and also the macro level, and that
Yeah.
is like the whole picture of the Bible is this story of a bride and the bride and the groomsman, right? And the church
Mm,
and Christ, and
mm,
the end of history is a marriage supper. So everything in our whole reality is shaped into this meta story of this groomsman who's pursuing and saving his bride, and the bride that's
mm.
pursuing and that this relationship that is culminating in history. So how does that first, just to kind of give some practical explanation
Yeah.
for what that looks like, and then how people, because I see it, the future of marriage therapy and counseling and all that's going to be bioenergetic instead of putting people on horrible drugs or taking their
Yeah.
money for years, talking endlessly about problems, which I think is a kind of trauma waste for a lot of people if you just do that forever.
Yeah.
That the solution will be Christ, but a
Yes.
biological, bioenergetic angle added with that to help. I can imagine priests and pastors and so forth in the future bringing, have you checked your thyroid? Have you had your carrot salad today into their counseling
Yeah.
session? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And how cool that world's going to look like, right? How much pro child that would be. And I think
Yeah.
that's the real focus we should have is like there are so many children who are victims of the screens, victims of violence and abuse, victims of
Yeah.
dysfunctional families. And
Yeah.
nobody, they go to church and they never heard about thyroid.
Yeah.
They go to church endlessly. And it's like, well, there's hobgoblins trying to get you to sin, but you never checked your thyroid.
Yeah.
Why is it that you feel those ways? Are those always just hobgoblins in your ears? Or are those hobgoblins maybe using the vehicle of your dysfunctional metabolism to predate you in your passions?
Yeah. Yeah. So that quote, so I think, also going back to what you said of the marriage of the church and Jesus and pursuing that, it was imbued in the same way that any marriage is with a vision and potentiality. Because Christ, the church itself, like as it was, 2000 years ago, it was, it's just a structure, but in terms of like this the symbolism, the potentiality was that future was the kingdom on earth, right? So there was a powerful vision that unified that marriage. And I think when you ask me like what the perfect day is, I think it's having a vision for the future. And like I said, it's not necessarily like this very conscious thing where you're like conjuring it. It's just like an effortless vision. And so you want to get out of bed, you want to do stuff. Um, and I think in my own personal experience with like relationships, that is the make or break of a marriage or of a relationship. I remember, being kind of a late teenager in college, whatever, and I told this to a girl I was dating. I said, when I close my eyes and I try to think about the future, my future, I see nothing but black. And and I realize that's like a lot, this is how a lot of people just live. And so there's no direction um imbued in their day and their actions, and there's no potentiality either. But when I had like my first real relationship, true love sort of thing, it was something that we would talk about. Is like, oh my gosh, there's a vision. Like we just see things. And she would tell me things like, I don't know why, but I just see this vision of you reading the newspaper at the kitchen table with glasses. Apparently, I have glasses in the future. And, our kids playing in the back and they come and sit on your knees or whatever. And she didn't have to like manifest this. She didn't have to go through some like, meditation. It was just there. It just spontaneously appeared in her mind, and it was so powerful. It was so powerful for both of us. And it wasn't just that, it was just a general sense of potentiality of the future when we got together. And and I think when you're healthy you tend to have that, whether you're single or not. And then when you are in a relationship, that vision becomes incredibly rich. Even if it's just your own private pursuits, just having your wife in the picture adds a level of depth, of energy, of vibrancy, color that is unmatched. And I think when you have that and it's shared in a marriage, that is that is the closest, you could possibly like physically feel to immortality, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So I think, in terms of like bioenergetics in relationships,
And the
it
worst, and
yeah,
it's the opposite. If it's dysfunctional, it's hell. The closest picture to
it's
hell.
hell. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's often like, there's no positive picture for the future. And so, you sweat the small things. Everything turns into a fight. There's no direction. There's no reason to even be doing this. Um, so I think in a relationship, it's important to maintain yourself, like your bodies
Mm.
and your minds, in a certain way that allows for this flow, like this creative flow, to naturally rise to the surface and imbue everything that you do. So, I don't know if like marriage therapy is gonna work or just taking a thyroid pill, but it's a general attitude of health and of like a brighter vision for the future, regardless of your circumstances, regardless of even if you're condemned to die from disease or whatever. I think that can still exist for your progeny, for the afterlife, whatever. Just a general like we're gonna be in a place of peace, of happiness. It exists, and as long as it exists, we have a direction in which to walk, to which to do things.
Yeah.